Michael Waugh is an award-winning singer and songwriter from Victoria who has released 4 albums since 2015, the last being The Cast. Since then, Michael has been releasing outstanding singles, including We Are Here and Fix Me. The latest single is the title track to his brand new album, Beauty and Truth, which absolutely lives up to its title. And also, there is some merch attached to this album. And I think, Michael, hello. Are you going to show us what
Hello.
the merch
Hi,
is?
there we go. I'm just going to go. There you go. You can see my chest. We are here. We are waiting. You are loved.
Fantastic. So people can find this merch on your website, and at the time we publish this, you may be past your shows, but if you're playing shows, I imagine it will be available.
I'll still gratefully accept people buying t-shirts from me. It's all good.
Okay.
I was saying to you off air, like it's so lovely when people buy your t-shirts, got your name on you and they're walking around with your big fat red head like on someone's chest. But like when someone's actually walking around with a shirt that says, "Here I am, I'm an ally," I think that is mighty fine. So even if you don't like the music, maybe you could just buy the t-shirt anyway.
It would be very hard to not like the music on this album, and I am going to ask you quite a few questions about it. However, I'm first going to ask you about a playlist I believe you have called Cheesy, Guilty Power Ballads.
It's
What is on this playlist, Michael?
there might be Barbara Streisand, there might be Phil Collins, there's certainly Air Supply.
Hmm.
Yeah, you better believe it, making love out of nothing at all. And it's just like it's all of those songs that you kind of like they're ones that you built in the car,
Hmm.
like you're kind of driving and you're singing real loud and you're kind of crying a little bit at the same time. That's the vibe.
Do you have Barbara Streisand and Neil Diamond's You Don't Bring Me Flowers on there?
That is my karaoke go-to, if truth be told. Yeah, so it's
That is an amazing song that I feel has been lost in the mists of time in terms of classic songs.
I heard this story that originally Barbara Streisand had a version of that song on her album. Neil Diamond had a version of that on his album, and then they kind of put the two like Franken song style together, and that's how we
Oh.
ended up with the duet.
Oh my word. Okay. Look, it's if anyone who's listening hasn't heard that song, please go out and listen to it, along with Barbara Streisand's album Guilty, which she made with Barry Gibb, and about which I could talk forever. But we're not going to talk about Barbara Streisand, Michael. Yeah, we're going to talk about you, and you do not produce the cheesy guilty power ballads, unless you've been secretly writing them and just not releasing them.
Well, I think the reason why it's relevant is because my boyfriend calls me like Cheeseball McGee is my nickname because he just thinks that I do like I am a fan of, and I think it comes from country music as well. Like the Dolly Parton song called "Jeannie's Afraid of the Dark," which is so cheesy and so like makes me cry every time I hear it. And I just learned to love that style of music. But yeah, no, there's no cheese on the record because when you work with Shane Nicholson, he just won't allow it.
Yeah, he is a master of authenticity, as are you. But before we talk about Shane and some of the other songs, I did want to mention the song you have on Beauty and Truth called Playlist, because that
Mm.
ties in nicely to the reference to the playlist. There's my segue. The last line is about giving someone a test after they've listened to your music. And I wondered if you'd ever decided you can't hang out with someone anymore because your musical tastes simply aren't aligned.
Oh, yeah, good question. I think that there are certain look, my partner is a big Celine Dion fan, and we've nearly come to blows over it. He's Canadian, and I am not as big a fan of Celine as he is, but
She is like the Queen of Canada. It's
I have been told on numerous occasions. The fact is that like that's the thing about music. It is so personal, and people find joy and beauty in whatever kind of floats their boat. I like I mean that was one of the things that happened in our relationship, which is where the song playlist comes from.
yeah.
Earlier, it was just about us kind of sending songs to each other, which is like, hey, I really like this song. and I put them together in a playlist, and I'd walk around everywhere, and some of them were songs that I'd never heard before, and they kind of everywhere I went, it kind of like reminded me of him. So yeah, it's a love song set on, like a streaming service, really.
How modern of you, Michael.
I know.
But just to continue with Celine, she's not only the Queen of Canada, she is the Queen of all emotions, and they're all every single emotion you could imagine is in every single song of Celine's.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's also, I don't know if you've seen the video for All Coming Back to Me Now, but for some reason there's a ghost riding a motorcycle through her house. I don't like, if someone can explain that to me, I would love to know.
Well, hopefully, if that someone is listening or watching, then they can, in fact, let you know. And Playlist is not the only song about music on the album, because you have a song called Patsy Cline,
Yeah.
and there is also a line about I imagine your boyfriend liking techno and you liking Patsy Cline, and
Yeah,
perhaps together the twain shall meet.
look, I do love Patsy Cline, but I think it's more Patsy Cline is really like, it's a tribute to that great vocalist, because she just knows how to sing the hell out of a song. Like, it is
Mhm,
really no one phrases quite like Patsy, and her control is extraordinary. And I grew up on that style of music, but I do think it is that, like, as Dolly Parton, once described her own music, I love the sad ass country songs. I just do. And it is, I think when you go into a new relationship, especially, there is a bit of vulnerability about,
mhm,
am I gonna get my heart broken at the end of this? And that's kind of what that song is about. It's about, how we go into love sometimes with our, all of our defenses down, and you put yourself on the line, and maybe it won't work out because I listen to Patsy Cline and you like techno. Yeah.
yeah. And I think it is a really vulnerable thing to show something that means so much to you to someone else, because the stakes are really high. It's like if you're showing someone you love Patsy Cline and they turn around and go, "Oh my God,
Yeah.
I can't stand it." You tend to think, are we actually on any kind of similar wavelength? And
Yeah.
my heart's been kind of broken because I hold this thing so dear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's true. Like, but for me too, like, country music at a certain time in my life was something that was my secret guilty pleasure. I,
Yeah.
I I did love it. It's not, certainly when I was growing up, it was not the coolest thing to
Mhm,
listen to, but I just loved those story songs, and I loved the way that it made me feel, and I love that kind of, especially like people like Patsy, and I also referred to Tammy Wynette in that
mhm,
track as well. Like, these women, kind of, there's such vulnerability and such strength at the same time,
mhm.
and I love that about country music.
Can you remember the eureka moment when you realized that those were the sorts of songs you loved?
I think it was Coat of Many Colors.
Okay.
And I think it was in the back of my parents' car. I think it was realizing that my home was nowhere near Tennessee, but that she really saw me. And that was, might as well have been, I didn't wear a coat of many colors to school, but in so many ways I did.
Mhm,
And I felt so seen, and so, yeah, so validated in that music. And that was, yeah, it was very early. Yeah.
mhm. So given that country music wasn't the coolest music to listen to as you were growing up, was there music you pretended to like that you didn't?
Oh, well, there's not, I have a very eclectic taste, and truth be told, I do actually like techno music as well. So I went to a techno festival once, and it was like, there's, about 5 hours in, I realized that the only thing they were going to play at the techno festival was techno music. But no, I, ah, I'll
Hope
for a
springs
vocal.
eternal, Michael. Hope springs
Oh,
eternal.
for a vocal. And but no, but the other music that I really loved when I was growing up, and a lot of this is thanks to Molly Meldrum on Countdown,
Yeah.
was like, there's like lots of Aussie rock stuff, but also these amazing women. So especially like Cyndi Lauper, Madonna. Kate Bush, oh my God. And these kind of women were real kind of songwriting, performing heroes for me, and I love them. So yeah, I don't pretend that I like them. I still, like if you play Like a Prayer, I'm still gonna, still gonna sing very loudly.
And those women also get a Guernsey on the album. Which I think is kind of full of some origin stories in a way for you. And I say full of origin stories rather than one origin story because I feel like there are different strands to your story, and that's the beauty and the truth of it. So I'm curious in relation to the title of the album and the title track, what for you is beauty?
Yeah. I think the reason why, well, apart from that song, which for me had been boiling away in the back of my head for a really long time, the title track, I think um, the record is also about falling in love and about love. So it's about the beauty of love, and that's really, there you go, Cheeseball McGee, Michael Waugh. I do, but it's true, and for me, like there's one of the songs, the last song on the record is to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is just about the beauty and joy of sitting on a couch with your partner, hungover on a Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you're never going to drink again.
Yeah.
And like and those lazy Sunday days eating pizza and watching telly together, that is beautiful. But so is the strength of those amazing women that I refer to in songs about women. And like so is there's I'm thinking about the songs and why, because my manager and I, Graham, who's just been such a beautiful support of the whole journey through this record, said, well, there's a lot of truth you're telling. Tell me about the beauty. Where's the beauty?
Right.
And there was a period of time where we kind of like kept thinking about, well, what is it that I mean when I say beauty and truth? What is the beauty? And I was finding joy in the small things, I think.
Mm-hmm. Now the title track is heartbreaking, and it's about breaking someone's heart because you have finally been truthful and had to let them go. But I think it's also about, well, it's not. I don't think it is also about wishing them beauty and truth. And in a world where you have no doubt felt that was not wished for you from time to time, particularly as you were growing up, I'm wondering how you've arrived at a place where you can wish that for others.
It's a really good question, Sophie. I think that's a work in progress.
Right.
I think if you look back through my back catalogue, like the first album is all about looking back at where I grew up with love,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to make peace with that town.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second album that I made was looking back at football,
Mm-hmm.
which for me was like such a powerful force and was used to isolate, dominate, and hurt me often, because that
Mm-hmm.
was my experience of that being me in that town, and making peace with that as well. And like it's ironic, like if you look at my music on streaming services, one of the most popular songs by far is Footy Trip, which I kind of wrote as this critique of toxic masculinity that ironically became this anthem for toxic masculinity. And I didn't even know that's like how Michael Waugh Footy Trip, like that just kind of comes up.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that song is again, it's about trying to make sense and make peace with those things. So I am still, even on this record, trying to dare myself to kind of say, speak my truth in ways that I just never thought that I would be able to,
Mm-hmm.
because that's one of the things about being gay in country Victoria at the time, certainly that I was growing up, was that you had to push it down and you had to hide it as a matter of safety and survival. That I feared being hated or hurt or both, and um, and being alone, and I think that all of those kind of childhood fears sometimes still come up and um, haunt me.
Mm-hmm.
But I've recognized that the way to deal with them is not to push them down, but to to let them have voice and let them have say, but also to recognize that there's more to me than vulnerability. There's also strength. I'm also the person, because I lived through that experience, who wants to make music, but also someone who wants to work as a teacher, which I do. Like I love my job as a teacher, and part of that comes from a place of one, in part because I was inspired by some amazing teachers in my community who looked after me, and in part because I want to contribute to making the world a safer place for kids.
But I'm thinking as you're talking about your second album about football and as you said, used to isolate and dominate you, and thinking about you saying you have to make peace with certain things and reflecting on the fact that the work is required from you. You're the one making peace. These institutions, these organisms of society, of culture are not trying to accommodate you or anyone else that they have attempted to dominate. And there's a
Mm.
price for that. You know, there's a price in terms of energy spent, time lost, the work you've had to do. And as you said, it's probably led you to be a songwriter and to be a teacher, but just to acknowledge that there is a price to be paid when you're the one who has to yield and make peace and find a way to tell the story about it, even if it ends up being in service of the greater good, which is that you may in fact help someone else.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to say is that at the moment, the white guy who's a cis male is not like the most vulnerable person in our community. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like there are so many more. I recently saw this wonderful piece of journalism that had edited together a a comment made by Thatcher in the 80s about how essentially gay kids should be taught that their way of life is wrong, and they should become normal,
Hmm.
and that was kind of then cut together with some similar rhetoric from someone who was saying something about a trans kids, that they should be taught to be more normal. Now, I kind of think at the moment, if anything, like my experience has taught me to try and be better at listening to other people's stories, and also to want to put my voice forward in support of inclusion for everyone, because at the moment that is sometimes at risk, and I don't see it necessarily as yielding, but yeah, I mean, there's no doubt stuff that hurt, but like it's about I got all of this strength, and I got all of this compassion, and I got all of this insight because of those experiences too. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
And when it comes to Thatcher, I remember reading The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, which you may have read as well. And there was a line in there about how Adrian thought that Thatcher had the voice of a gentlewoman and the eyes of a psychotic killer. So it's obviously stuck with me all these years because I just thought that's so incredibly true. So yes, there you go. The eyes of the psychotic killer behind that particular statement about what was and wasn't normal. And I've completely lost track of my questions here, Michael. We're just having a free flowing conversation. But I will ask you if there are songs you have had written for the album which didn't make it on actually.
Oh, I didn't. It's interesting because usually there's a whole slew of songs that I kind of put forward for a record that don't make it on. I remember uh, there was something actually that I wrote for, um, that was supposed to be a piece that was supposed to be on um, uh, What We Might Be, which is the first record, that it ended up being on the Weir.
Right.
Yeah, it was interesting that it kind of, so sometimes there's like an excess of songs. That wasn't the case with this record. It really was very much I am writing, I'm curating a particular group of songs. This is what I need to say right now. And like I said, a lot of them are about being in love, or about um or about coming out. And that's kind of thematically what holds it together and my journey through that.
What was the first song you wrote for the album?
Um, the song actually, which is the oldest song on the record, is Patsy Cline. It was actually a song that was written a really, really long time ago, but felt relevant because it spoke about vulnerability and love.
Mm,
So I wrote that a really, really long time ago. But probably the first song that I am really ambitiously set out to write was "We Are Here," and it was such a mission statement for the record because it really was saying um, like here is the history of gay men who have led to the point where I can be here on sunburnt country and speak my truth. Um, and and at the same time, like I want to position myself somewhere on the timeline, making it safer for somebody else coming next.
mm,
Um, and that took a while to write that song because I felt like I had to I suppose like I wanted to do justice to all of those people.
mm,
And part of it was research. It's like how do I select who is right to sit side by side here? And there was a whole and then like how do I tell my story within that as well as looking to a to a future and it was like when I made this record with Shane, I said these a lot of these songs are like little personal anthems, and so how do you write an anthem without sounding like Cheeseball McGee too? So I don't know. Yeah, We Are Here was probably the first song that I really yeah that said this is what this record is about. When I wrote that song, I knew that this is what the record was about.
And as you wrote songs after that, were you thinking of a whole arc of a like the biggest story within the album, and then thinking about the stories within that you were going to tell to fit that arc, or was it more that certain stories, certain songs suggested themselves to you as you were going along?
It's funny because I don't my writing process is not that premeditated. I think I knew that there was a body of work that I was putting together, and it was probably more towards the end where I To Be Alive was the last thing that I wrote on the record. It's kind of and that's the last song on the record as well. So We Are Here is the first song on the record, and To Be Alive is the last song on the record. And it kind of felt like when I wrote To Be Alive, it was like, and I'm done. That felt right to end with that one.
Yeah,
So yeah, yeah, but it wasn't sitting down and going, oh, here we go. I better churn out one about this now. It was
yeah,
just like,
right.
um,
And it's interesting that you said you felt that it was the end, because often in my day job I work in book publishing and I'm often talking to writers, and I encourage them to go with what they feel about things rather than what they're trying to intellectually reason themselves into and out. I was like, do you feel that the manuscript is ready? Not, oh, I think it's ready and I really want it to be ready, so I'm going to tell myself it is, but do you feel it? So yeah, I love that you said that you felt it.
yeah, it was a really I mean, Graham, my manager, was a really lovely kind of editor, I suppose, in that sense, if we were to use that. And he was kind of challenged me to think about, like I said, that challenge about, well, there's a lot of truth here, but where's the beauty to balance it out? And and yeah, and so and I think that was where we got to with To Be Alive as well. It's like, oh yeah, I think that's the end of the seesaw that we needed. That's lovely. But very much when I wrote Beauty and Truth, it really resonated for Graham. I had been working on the chorus of that song for a very long time and didn't feel that I was telling the story properly. And when it finally happened, it was like I wrote the song in like 3 hours. It was a very quick writing process. And I sent it off to Graham, not kind of thinking that it was that good, and it really resonated with him, and it was like, yeah, it feels right that that is the center of this album, man. And so, yeah.
And it is, it's a glorious song. So you described Graham as an editor, but I imagine Shane Nicholson, your producer, is a collaborator in a different sense, or is he also an editor of your work?
No, Graham. Uh, I mean, I said to Shane at one point, "Oh yeah, this is the title track for the record," and he goes, "Oh, doesn't really matter to me. We're just we're just making music together." And so rather than thinking about like he's very he wants to get to the heart of the song and to do the song justice. And then he's kind of building this world of the album as well. So it all kind of sits in a world, but that each piece on the album has its own individual spirit as well. So we don't have a record where there's 11 songs that sound the same. And it's a real gift that he has, because if I listen back to those demos, you can see that he has honored every single one of those demos that I've given him. And yet also found ways to make them make sense as a whole, while also, yeah, being so diverse. There's such diversity on this record. I love it.
Yeah, I've often thought that his genius as a producer is in identifying what the core thing is for the artist and for each song, and then bringing that out, but not in a way that it sounds like it's overloaded, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
it's not like the absolute focus, but it's pulling through as the main thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's one of my favorite writers at the moment is Jacob Vincent, who
Oh, yeah.
has made this beautiful series of songs with Shane, but in particular the one that he released around Anzac Day.
Yes, I had a chat to
Um,
him about it.
oh man, what a song, what a killer song! But he worked with Shane on the production of that, and it was like, mate, that's spot on. Yeah, it really is. He really is a genius, and usually it is like Shane playing 17 instruments and me singing. But with this record, it was really lovely to work with a live band as well. So I got to see him be that musical director of a group of people. And he has such a deft, light touch. And there was such, um, like the people in the room were such a wonderful balance of personalities as well, and he led in such a genius way. I loved it. Loved it.
And on some of these songs, you have some big backing vocals, which is not something that's normally associated with your sound, and quite a few people by the sound of it.
Yeah, well, there was a packed vocal that we did at the end of the last day of the session. We were kind of standing in the room and like singing really loud. But Jen Myers is with the biggest voice in country music in Australia. Was does some amazing wailing at the end of Out, and We Are Here, and TJ loves pretending to be Jen Myers. I'll give you the red hot tip. He does a great Jen Myers impersonation.
I would like
And
to see that, Michael.
actually, we were sitting in someone's backyard, and I was playing the song one day, and he did it, and we have a video recording of it. It's somewhere up on the internet. You can look.
Oh, okay. I'll go looking.
Um, and but also the Roslins, because when we did Patsy Cline, I just love that sound of the Jordanaires, and I just really wanted us to explore that. And the Roslins did this amazing um, uh, arrangement for the end of that song. But a lot of it, like in Young and Dumb, which has got these massive backing vocals, a lot of that is Shane Nicholson just being a genius. I know,
Oh.
I
He's
know.
crafty. He's
If
crafty.
he is tricky, you've got to watch him.
But yeah, it's a lovely addition to your recorded sound, because I was thinking, oh, I haven't heard that on Michael's tracks before, but it really suited the album and suited the particular songs that were chosen. So it wasn't as if you and Shane just went, oh, let's throw a few backing vocals here and there. They're perfect for the songs they're on.
Thank you. Yeah.
Now, your songwriting, I think, is a great example of how the specific is universal. And, I think of a song of yours like Warrigal Police, which
Mm.
always makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and because it's so vivid with its detail. because you have this great detail in all of your songwriting. But I'm wondering, in order to keep track of those stories you want to tell, do you keep notes of details?
No, the way that I write usually is that there's a moment of inspiration where I'm riding my bike or walking between classes or driving in the car, and like there'll be a confluence of a small lyric and a melody line, and sometimes that's the chorus and sometimes it's just somewhere in the middle of a song, and I'll just record myself singing it on the iPhone. And then, and I don't know if you know this, but on voice memos it records as the place where you are when you record it. And so often it's like, Park Street, like,
Yeah.
oh, Park Street, I wonder what that sounds like. And so you get all these like moments. And sometimes when I sit down to do some, right, maybe sometimes one of those gets stuck in my head. And sometimes it's just that like I sit down with and try and find out what is the story that sits around that particular melody. And that's sometimes where the detail happens, because it is like um it's like listening to a conversation happening in the room next door. You can make out that there's noise or that people are talking, but you got to listen really closely to work out what it is exactly that they're saying. And that's a sensation for me sometimes when I'm writing. Like I'm really trying to tune in to what is this story. And it's interesting that you mentioned Warrigal Police, because that was a moment I was driving past Warrigal. There was a news story about a kid who died in a car accident. And I just immediately went to in my head, the moment when dad gets the knock on the door from the police that morning.
Mm,
And he's, and what that moment must have looked and felt like.
mm,
And, 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 if you're listening correctly to the story and the song as the writer,
mm.
you'll capture those moments, I think. And that's what I'm trying to do anyway. I'm just trying to be honest to the song. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a not unrelated song, because it's also about a father, is Father's Day on Beauty and Truth, and there's so much wistfulness in your vocal. I found the vocal on that song to be different to the others, in a way that was really affecting. And again, not really a question but a comment. But yeah, I'm interested in the details you put into that song as well.
Mm. Yeah. I've certainly, yeah, I think it is those textures of Father's Days gone by that that I was trying to capture when I wrote that I wanted to honor all of those Father's Days gone by. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and, you know, the song is deliberately also nostalgic, like it is looking back with love at times gone by, even those things that, are annoying about, you know, um, telling someone 20 times to pick up the towels from the bathroom floor, it's about, yeah, it's about telling or trying to tell a really difficult truth about
Mhm.
relationship. So, mm.
So as you prepare to perform this album live, are there certain songs that you won't perform just because they may be more difficult than others?
I'm gonna play the whole record. Um, Mainly because I think that they make sense as a body of work.
Mhm.
And I think when you write in your bedroom and when you make a record in Shane Nicholson's recording studio, you don't get to hear and feel the songs land.
Mhm.
And I wanna launch the record into the world by seeing how they're felt by people. And
Mhm.
the only way you can do that is to stand in a room and sing them as authentically as you can, and let people show you what they feel when you play them.
And I've seen you play live several times, and you are a performer who really loves, I think, to connect with the audience in that you will look people in the eye, you are right there with them, you are often physically close to them, which I would imagine can be a little scary sometimes because they're right there. There's nowhere to hide from the reaction they're having to your songs. Have you always been like that as a performer?
Um, yeah, it's interesting. Probably the time that it was hardest to do that was after my parents died, because it was at the time the majority of songs that I had were all about them and growing up in country Victoria, and I became a little not callous, but I just couldn't be. I didn't feel that I could be as present in the songs when the real feeling was so raw.
Mm,
And then I kind of came to a point of knowing that um, they deserve to have their story told, and I was sharing a little bit of them with people. It's like telling people about how special those human beings were.
mhm,
Lucky I was to have been a part of their world.
mhm.
Mm, yeah.
Well, and I do think that people who see you live also get to feel that with you. It's not just about sitting there receiving music; it is a complete experience. So now that Beauty and Truth is recorded, it's about to be released to the world. Do you feel as if you have closed a chapter of your life or opened one?
Good question. I think I don't know that I think that there's a scary thing just before you release a record, because like you don't know how it's going to be accepted. Um, even though I've been really lucky and I've had people really accept wholeheartedly the music that I've made in the past, I don't know how this collection of songs is going to be accepted for people. And in some ways, these songs are a little different. I haven't written like a group of love songs like this before. And so I don't know how they will land. But because of that, I'm kind of like all of my thinking is on this current group of songs, and I don't know if I have more to say along those lines, or if there's other things that I need to say. All that I know is that at the moment the focus completely is just getting this out into the world.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I think they're pragmatic love songs, yeah, and where they are a continuation of your previous work is that you're anchored in the world. Like you're not someone who is not realistic about how humans behave and how they feel and what motivates them. I think you've always been alert to that in others and in yourself. And so in that respect, this body of work is, as I said, a continuation of what you've done before. These are not pie in the sky love songs about like, oh, this is this idealized person that I'm after and they don't want me and it's all so terrible. It's like this is actual love, which is what you're experiencing, which is
Yeah.
beautiful. And anyone who's interested in the human experience, I think, loves love and loves to witness it. And I don't mean that in a cheeseball way. I mean it in a genuine way. Just to bring it back full circle, Michael.
It's the wheel of cheese. Yeah.
Oh, jeez. So there you go. That's what I think about this album.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's something sometimes idealistic about love. That's kind of, that's part of how we bond with a
Mm,
person. Sometimes we do um, allow ourselves to dream and see and imagine the full potential.
mm,
I don't think that that's necessarily it's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, but I do. Yeah, I mean, I'm older and I'm also um, like it's complex being in an adult relationship, especially when you want to kind of fight through all of the stuff that like, which is part of the reason why this is on the record too, that and when you're taught um to be ashamed of yourself
mm.
for being who you are, it makes connection with other people more complex.
Yeah.
Where you have to work really hard to keep examining your own motivations and challenging yourself. I mean, I am so good at inventing scenarios designed exclusively to hurt my own feelings. I'm very, very good at that.
Wow.
And so I have to kind of keep reminding myself about my core belief, which is in the goodness of people. People, I think, always try to do the best that they can with what they've got at the time. Mm.
That's an extraordinary statement that you're great at designing scenarios that are organizing scenarios that are designed to hurt your own feelings. And
Mm.
that if that's something you've been doing for a really long time, it's a very hard habit to break, I would imagine. And I'm interested in how art has helped you manage that.
Yeah, well, that's because it becomes a way that you create a perception of yourself. It's like this is a version of myself that I'm giving out there. And then other people see that and provide their own perspective. And that's the beauty of relationship is perspective. It's like we get to see ourselves mirrored back by the world. And you know, and sometimes, you know, as I'm kind of want to kind of lean into catastrophizing things, TJ is very good at reminding me sometimes that, honey, that bears little semblance to the evidence provided to you. And so you do kind of, that's the beauty of art. Like you get that perspective, and then you get others kind of going, oh, okay, well, that's, you know, that's kind of what it is. I mean, for me, a lot of the stories here are about going, hey, this is so Fix Me, for example, the story about, you know, like I don't really know where the shame begins, which is the first line of the song. I don't know where the shame begins, you know,
Mm,
when they taught me not to be like them, and what if you are one of them?
mm,
Um, and so it's hardwired within me
mm,
to to be you know who I am in the world, and it really is like, you know, it takes relationship with others to challenge those kind of those myths and to see that they're not helpful and they're not true.
mm. But they're powerful stories, and stories that you've been told to tell yourself from a young
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
Yeah. So only other stories, I guess, can break them, and they're the stories that you're creating for yourself. And also, you talk about relationship, the relationship you have with your audience. As I mentioned, as a live performer, I see you do it. You have that relationship with the audience members, and also as a recording artist. This album will go out into the world. As I'm often saying to other creators, you'll never ever know the full extent of people you've positively influenced and affected by the work, because they won't tell you. Not everyone will be in contact.
No, but I had this beautiful, like I played up at Woodford Folk Festival at the end of last year, and it's in Queensland, and there's like 100,000 people or something at this festival. It is massive. And they have, because everyone lives on site for, you know, the 6 or 7 or 8 days of the festival, they've got mailboxes around the festival where people can, you can write a letter to someone that you've seen and send them a letter. And I received about 5 letters from different audience members, and most of them were from who were from parents of queer kids, and talking about how the stories I was telling about growing up in, you know, in country Victoria in the 80s, um, made them and their kids feel seen. And one terrible story about this kid who had been bullied every day of his high school experience, and impacted his mental health to the point where he tried to take his own life and got through to the other end. And then the family came to see one of my shows and heard me sing some of those songs and felt so seen. And the last line from in the letter is, "Thank you for your music. Let the healing begin." And it was just so magical. I don't know that as you say, you don't get to hear from everyone, but the fact that there was this beautiful, beautiful story
Mm.
about like how, not that it, I don't think that music saves someone's life, but it does help that person feel seen and validated for their experience, and that meant the world.
It may not directly save their life, but I think it sometimes gives people a reason to want to save their own lives because they feel seen, and that acknowledgement is hugely important. That letter was beautiful. It was also truthful. I think that's the perfect note on which to wrap up our conversation about Beauty and Truth, your new album, which is magnificent. Congratulations, Michael, and great to talk to you.
I think so. Thank you.